World of Warcraft is a fantasy universe, and in a fantasy universe, there has to be some kings. But in Warcraft, all of them kind of suck. King Tyrannus Menethil, killed by his own son. King Rostakhan, died to the Alliance. King Greymane. Bruh. King Magni Bronzebeard.
Champion!
And King Varian Wrynn, who... Okay, that was kind of cool. But he also got stabbed by 2 random mobs and then turned to dust.
The unworthy have not yet learned of my power.
When the thunder echoes, all other kings, queens, emperors, and rulers tremble in fear because Lei Shen, the Thunder King, is easily the most powerful and impactful ruler Azeroth has ever seen. His history is critical to understanding the ancient legends of Warcraft lore and has remained a fan favorite in the lore community. Let's find out why. Before we talk about the Thunder King, I need to pay my bills and let you know, you're not safe. No one is safe. Unless you have NordVPN, the sponsor of today's video. If you're like me and you use the internet to look up obscure lore facts about your favorite fictional characters that no one really cares about, or you just use the internet, you are at risk from third parties and your internet service provider spying on your activity. That's why I use NordVPN, and there's a deal right now to get a 2-year plan with 1 additional month free with a huge discount. Another great thing about using Nord is it grants you access to region-locked content on the internet with just a click of a button. Did you know that you can get access to Dutch Netflix, which has Lord of the Rings, right now?
Wauw, dat is geweldig. Ik heb NordVPN nodig.
Click the link down below and secure your privacy and maybe even explore Middle-earth with this 2-year plan with 1 additional month free with a huge discount. Nord is so confident in their product that there's also a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee, so go to nordvpn.com/platinumwowvpn. Thanks Nord for sponsoring this video. The ad is now over. The Mogu were once a race of stone, who served the Titans during the Ordering of Azeroth. After the Curse of Flesh transformed them into fleshy, mortal creatures, everything changed. With flesh came the emotions of weakness, fear, greed, and anger that drove the Mogu into a constant state of internal conflict. This period of time was known as the Age of 100 Kings, a time where the southern reaches of Azeroth were thrown into a constant state of warfare as the Mogu struggled to overpower one another. Long ago, their Titan Keeper Master Ra-Den had just disappeared, leaving his servants aimless, confused, and desperate. That was over a millennia ago, and still, some Mogu desperately cling to the idea that he may one day return. Lei Shen was raised during this time of conflict. He learned the art of warfare from his father, who was one of the many warlords who fought for power among the Mogu. Even in his young life, Lei Shen saw the Mogu's infighting and squabbling as a destruction of their race's great potential. The young Mogu was forced to confront this firsthand as he watched his father be murdered by one of his closest advisors. Instead of taking his father's place, Lei Shen chose exile and decided to wander the lands and meditate on the failures of his kind. Typically in Mogu culture, it was customary that when a warlord was killed, their rivals would then slay all of the slain warlord's family to snuff out their lineage. But when the Mogu saw Lei Shen simply give up and walk away, they assumed that he had gone mad and would not pose a threat ever again. But oh, how wrong they were. As Lei Shen traveled, he pondered the folly of his people and their circumstances. Where did Master Ra go? Was the Curse of Flesh a part of some master plan the Titans had created? Was this all just a test to prove the loyalty of the Mogu? Were the Titans they worshipped waiting for them to be enlightened by some new discovery? And the question Lei Shen pondered the most How has World of Warcraft been out for 17 years, and there is still no ducks in this game? That conundrum he was most befuddled by. Lei Shen realized that if he sought the answers to his inquiries, he'd have to find Master Ra. For years, Lei Shen searched endlessly to find his master once again. Eventually, he found an entrance to a hidden vault north of the Vale that once held great importance to the Mogu. Within the stillness of the vault, Ra Den sat quietly. The Titan Keeper gave no reaction to Lei Shen. The Mogu questioned him, asking what the purpose they now had. Why had he just stopped contacting his servants? Was this all according to plan? And where are the ducks, Master Ra? Where are they? Days and weeks passed, and not a word was given. Lei Shen then realized that Master Ra was not quietly contemplating some master plan. He had just given up. This enraged Lei Shen. Master Ra was supposed to be a literal instrument of the Titan's will, but now he had just abandoned their purpose to do literally nothing.
Time grows short.
Lei Shen's words had finally gotten a reaction out of Ra, and the Titan Keeper led him to see the reasoning for his absence. The two traveled to the Thundering Mountain, a hostile, cursed place no mortal has ever traveled to before.
There is no hope. The coming threat will consume us all.
Within the depths of the mountain, Ra Den showed him the last remaining essence of the slain Titan Aman'Thul. The Pantheon was dead. All of the Titans were killed thousands of years ago. Sargeras had killed them all, and either his army of demons or the horrors of the void would consume all of the universe. Ra Den had simply given up after he found out all the Titans were dead and didn't even bother telling the Mogu. It was pointless to fight back. The Titans had lost, and their downfall was inevitable.
You only delay the inevitable.
Ra Den hoped that showing this truth would make Lei Shen give in to the same despair, but it actually had the adverse effect. Lei Shen found Master Ra's despair as pitiful. He had hidden the truth from the Mogu. He let them fall into madness. He let them fall into a constant cycle of pain and misery after his abandonment. Ra Den was no demigod. He was a faulty tool who lacked the vision of their masters. If all of the Titans were dead and their servant refused to continue the Pantheon's glorious legacy, he would do so himself. It is said that Lei Shen ripped the very heart out of Ra Den. The power was like nothing he had ever felt before. No longer was he a servant. He was now a god. Lei Shen's most devoted followers traveled to the Thundering Mountain and dropped to their knees once they saw his glorious new form. They said, "We will call you the Lightning King." Lei Shen simply scoffed in response.
Lightning strikes in an instant and is over in a flash. But thunder proclaims the coming of the storm. Thunder quakes the skies long before the lightning strikes, and thunder echoes in the hills long after the lightning's power is spent. It is thunder that sends animals cowering and fills the hearts of peasants with dread. Let thunder be my herald, so that my power is felt throughout the land. I will be the Thunder King. duck. Yes.
My power cannot be contained.
The Thunder King now demanded that all Mogu bow before him. Once again, their race would be the defenders of Azeroth, and they'd continue the Titan's legacy and restore order once again. Lei Shen utterly crushed all Mogu who defied him. The fortunate ones were killed mercifully, and the unfortunate were locked in chains for centuries until they were properly broken. The Thunder King's iron fist struck fear into the hearts of the Mogu. Some thought he had claimed the powers of the Veil, or was a literal Titan reborn. But soon their fear would turn into devotion when Lei Shen displayed his godlike powers. One of the Thunder King's first of many accomplishments was mastering the use of a Titan device called the Engine of Nalak Shah. With this Titan machinery, he found a way to revert the curse of flesh in some of the Mogu, and restored them to their pure forms. Under the Thunder King's rule, no land was left unconquered, as his army claimed every corner of the Vale. This was the beginning of a prosperous new empire for the Mogu, in a time of darkness for the other races surrounding the Vale.
Breakable flesh! You will make a fine slave.
The first to feel the wrath of the Mogu was the Jinyu. The Jinyu realized that they had no chance of fighting Lei Shen's empire alone, and allied themselves with the Hosen, a race of mischievous monkey people who were known for their effective guerrilla tactics. No pun intended there. The alliance proved to be effective, as for 40 days and 40 nights, the monkey and the fish people held back the Mogu onslaught. But on the eve of the final battle, the Hosen betrayed them and pledged our loyalty to the Thunder King in hopes of getting preferential treatment. Of course, the Thunder King would never help such pathetic creatures.
Unworthy.
This left the Jinyu severely outnumbered, but they did not go down without a fight. During the skirmish, Jinyu water breakers would conjure bubbles of water and lift the Mogu into the air, only for them to plummet to their deaths.
Make a demonstration of these invaders, such that all nations tremble before me.
Their resistance was impressive, but ultimately futile. One of the Mogu generals, named Haquin, outsmarted the Jinyu and used their very own fishing spears to wipe out the last remaining resistance, and soon after they were fully conquered by the Thunder King's army.
These insects do not know their place.
Lei Shen was so humored by the embarrassing display that they made of the Jinyu, and he crafted his general 100 of the finest golden spears to praise him for his fine work. With the monkey people and the fish people conquered, the Mogu marched up north to Kunlai Summit, where the panda people fled to hide from the Thunder King's army. The Mogu marched to the foothills of the mountain. With his godly voice, Lei Shen shouted,
Choose the greatest warrior among you and have him face me in one-on-one combat. Should I win, your people will submit to my rule. Should he win, I shall leave these lands in peace. Excuse me, do you not know who I am? I am Lei Shen, the mother Thunder King. Answer me now.
Silence filled the air until a booming voice echoed from the peaks of the mountains, whose power rivaled Lei Shen's.
Challenge accepted.
From the top of the mountain, the august celestial named Zulin, the White Tiger, descended downward, and the two godlike beings locked themselves in combat. They fought tooth and nail in a battle that lasted 30 whole days. In the end, Zulin succumbed to the Thunder King's might, but he did not grant him the mercy of death. Instead, the victorious king imprisoned the tiger and chained him at the peak of the mountain so he could watch for all eternity and bask in his failure as the Pandaren served Lei Shen's empire as slaves. The Mogu used the blood, sweat, and tears of the enslaved animal people to expand their empire and created structures like the monolithic Serpent Spine Wall. Okay, one more thing. You might know that the Pandaren actually worship 3 other gods, and these group of gods are called the August Celestials. Yeah, well, it's only briefly stated in the lore, but Lei Shen beat the crap out of the other 3. The Thunder King's rapidly expanding empire drew notice from other civilizations on Azeroth, specifically the Zandalari trolls from the east who saw great promise in the Mogu. One of the high priests, named Zulathara, approached Lei Shen with a proposition. The Mogu held incredible power on Azeroth, but the trolls held the knowledge of the world. With their empires combined, they could fully dominate every inch of Azeroth with ease. At this point, there was no empire that came even close to the combined might of the Zandalari and Mogu armies. Despite this, Lei Shen, being the asshole that he is, did plan on enslaving the Zandalari when they were no longer useful to him. But as time went on, both parties learned that they were invaluable allies and were a great help to one another. Lei Shen even told Zul'Thara of a ritual to revive his spirit if he was ever killed. He never told his own Mogu empire about this ritual because he knew how power-hungry they were and how they could never be trusted with such critical information. Meanwhile, in the southwest, in a tropical land called Oldham, the Titan creations called the Tol'vir dwelled. They were created to protect a Titan facility called the Forge of Origination, an extremely powerful weapon that could eradicate all life on Azeroth. The Tol'vir also succumbed to the Curse of Flesh and patiently waited for Ra-Den's return. But one day, they received a summon from their Mogu cousin to come visit their empire. Upon arrival, the Tol'vir were stunned to see how advanced the Mogu had become. The Thunder King greeted them with open arms and toured them around his humongous empire. The Tol'vir took notice of the abhorrent use of slaves, but, they didn't really mind it that much. Besides, they were more focused on the protection of Titan creations more than anything. What the Tol'vir did have a problem with was when Lei Shen told them that he ripped the heart out of Ra-Den, their master, stole his power, and oh yeah, he also locked him in a basement in his palace, where he's now sucking out his Titan blood called anima. If you've played the Shadowlands expansion before, you'll know that there's also stuff called anima, which is the essence of all mortal souls. Blizzard originally said, oh yeah, these 2 animas are kind of the same thing, and then they walked back on that statement. And now there's 2 different things called anima in the Warcraft universe that are totally unrelated. Okay. Anyways, in the novel called Shadows of the Horde, this Titan anima was described to be so powerful that if you tossed it on a human, they would regress back into becoming a Vrykul. And Lei Shen used it to make robots, torture cow people, and make new races by using it on lizards to create the Sarok, and Trogs to make the Grummels. Oh, and yeah, Lei Shen planned on securing the Forge of Origination for himself so he could recreate all living things on Azeroth to serve him, including the Tol'vir. Obviously, they were furious. They'd never bow to a traitor king like Lei Shen and stormed out of his empire. The Thunder King let them flee because he knew their choice really didn't matter. He'd take what he wanted by force.
I am Lei Shen, slayer of kings and gods. You have made a grave mistake.
The Thunder King and his Mogu army marched towards Oldham. Lei Shen was so confident he would lay claim to the Forge that he invited the Zandalari not to help, but to simply watch as the Thunder King did what he does best: dominate all opposition. At the base of the pyramid, only a few Tol'vir stood armed. Lei Shen let out a laugh.
Is that all you can muster? Pathetic. Do you not realize under my rule, Azeroth will be cleansed of all corruption? All shall be pure in form. All shall be one unified force, and all shall bow to the Thunder King.
The Tol'vir had edited the code in the Forge of Origination to only wipe out all life in Oldham, killing Lei Shen, his army, and the trolls in an instant, turning the once lush jungle into a barren desert. In the end, it was the Thunder King's hubris that led to his downfall, and both Troll and Mogu empires would never recover from this massive blow. Turns out that threatening the Tol'vir, who had access to a giant nuke, was actually not a good idea. The Tol'vir then shrouded the now scorched land of Oldham in mystery to hide the forge from being claimed by any outside mortals ever again. But of course, Mist of Pandaria came out and Lei Shen returned. The Zandalari had used the ritual Lei Shen talked about, and they used their powers combined to take over Azeroth once again. And somehow they recovered his body after being blown up in a giant nuke? How? I don't know, stop asking questions. Point is, Lei Shen was resurrected and his conquest continued once again. But, not really a lot of lore happens here. I mean, he's just kind of back, trying to do the same thing again, but this time with a lot more trolls. And, of course, we kill him again.
I sought only to finish the work of the gods.
But will we ever see him return? I mean, he's been resurrected once, so why can't he be resurrected again? Well, about that. You see, in Mist of Pandaria, there was this long quest chain for the legendary cloak, and during this quest chain, you have to kill Lei Shen and take his heart and give it to Wrathion, who then eats it. So, I don't think he's coming back. But no matter. Lei Shen has continued to be a fan favorite in the lore community because he's a villain who took matters into his own hands. A villain whose motives were justified and only wanted to continue the legacy of his creators. And for me personally, has one of the most interesting stories ever told in the Warcraft universe. But I will agree, he's kind of an asshole.
Let me out of here. I'm sorry. I was kind of in a depressive rut. My heart hurts. I mean, I don't have a heart, and it hurts. Rot dead, more like rot. Don't leave me here, please. I've been trapped in here for like 10,000 years. I'm hungry.